Nash Caldwell had always believed he knew Juniper better than anyone else ever could. After 5 years of marriage, marked by laughter, struggles, and a shared vision of the future, he trusted in the foundation they had built. He still remembered the night he proposed, the way her eyes lit up as she said yes, full of love and certainty. Together, they had shaped a life anchored in trust. But that evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, the low murmur of the television barely noticeable in the background, Juniper said something that cracked that certainty wide open. So casually, like she was commenting on the weather, she mentioned she had dinner plans with a co-worker that Friday. Nash blinked, waiting for her to elaborate, expecting a hint that he'd misheard her or that she was joking. But she went on spreading butter on her toast, unfazed, calm. The normalcy of it unnerved him. A chill crept through his chest, suspicion blooming like frost. His voice remained even, though a storm brewed behind his eyes. "What?" Juniper looked up briefly, and in that fleeting glance, Nash caught something, like she was measuring his reaction, bracing for it. "It's just dinner," she said breezily. "It doesn't mean anything. I love you. This doesn't change our relationship." Nash stared at her, studying every detail in her expression. No guilt, no hesitation, just a strange calm, as if she truly believed what she was saying. His appetite vanished, and a dull throb pounded beneath his ribs, but he refused to let it show. She was expecting him to react, maybe to get angry, raise his voice, or slam a door. But Nash wasn't built for impulsive outbursts. He was a man of control, especially when it mattered most. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, already crafting his response. If this was a test, or worse, a game, he had no intention of losing. A small, detached smile curled at the edge of his lips as he lifted his water glass. "I see," he said coolly. There was a barely perceptible hitch in her breathing, just enough to confirm what he suspected. She hadn't asked for permission. She had been trying to provoke him. The silence that followed was thick and drawn out. Juniper kept pushing her food around, pretending nothing was wrong. But Nash didn't look away. He watched her with the quiet intensity of someone who had just recognized a fault line beneath his feet. "Maybe," he said after a pause, his voice casual, "I should try going out with someone, too, just to understand what it's like." Juniper's mask cracked for the first time. Her fingers, steady until now, trembled as they clutched her fork. She blinked fast, thrown by the unexpected turn. "You've met someone?" she asked, a thread of unease winding through her tone. Nash shrugged. "There's a woman at the gym I chat with often. Might be interesting to have dinner with her sometime." Color drained from Juniper's face. The poise she wore so confidently moments ago began to dissolve, and Nash hadn't even made a move yet. The upper hand was shifting. Her fork dropped silently to the plate. She no longer held control of the moment. Nash leaned back in his chair, at ease on the outside, but inside, a cold satisfaction settled in. He had forced her into the same doubt she'd so effortlessly handed him. "Oh," she murmured, trying to recover. "I see." She glanced away, aimlessly pushing at her food. But Nash didn't miss it, the subtle twitch in her leg under the table, her tell when she was nervous. "Is that an issue?" he asked, his tone smooth as silk. Juniper laughed, short and forced. "Of course not." "I didn't think you'd actually do it," Juniper said quietly. Nash arched a brow. "That's interesting," he said, folding his arms. "I could say the same about you." For once, she didn't have a clever response. His words landed exactly where he meant them to, slicing clean through her practiced nonchalance. She tried to recover, raising her chin and speaking as if unaffected. "So, who is this woman you mentioned at the gym?" Nash resisted the urge to smirk. That shift in her voice, the edge of curiosity cloaked in tension. It told him everything. She wasn't detached anymore. Now, she was engaged, uneasy. "I'm not sure that matters," he replied smoothly, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "If it doesn't affect what we have, then why should the details matter?" Juniper let out a soft laugh, but the hollowness in her tone betrayed her. "So, it's real, then? You're actually going out with her?" Nash tilted his head slightly, locking eyes with her. "You're the one who opened the door to this, remember?" Her lips parted, as if to respond, but no words came. For the first time that evening, she was left speechless. A heavy silence settled between them, thick with everything they weren't saying. The confidence she'd shown earlier was crumbling now, giving way to doubt. This wasn't theoretical anymore. Not for Nash. Not for either of them. And Juniper clearly hadn't expected him to call her bluff. He could see it now, plain and undeniable. She had never truly intended for him to reciprocate. And now that he had, the consequences were beginning to take shape. She was on the verge of losing something she had always assumed would be there. Without saying more, Nash drained the last of his water, set the glass gently on the table, and stood up. "Good night, Juniper." She didn't reply. She just sat there, watching him walk away, her expression unreadable, part regret, part disbelief. That moment marked a shift. Everything changed in the days that followed. The once warm rhythm of their home dissolved into silence. They still went about their daily routines. Nash left for work and returned like clockwork. But now, the quiet between them was louder than any fight could have been. At first, Juniper convinced herself it was temporary. Maybe he was just reacting, trying to get under her skin. Maybe if she waited him out, he'd let it go. But the more time passed, the clearer it became, Nash wasn't pretending. He wasn't angry. He was disengaging. What truly unsettled her came one Wednesday morning. She sat at the kitchen table sipping her coffee when she noticed Nash standing at the hallway mirror, adjusting his collar. It wasn't a new habit, but something about the way he studied his reflection, smoothed down his shirt, and ran a hand through his hair felt intentional. Then he checked his phone and smiled at the screen. A knot tightened in Juniper's stomach. For the first time, fear crept in. Not fear of confrontation, but fear of losing him altogether. She tried to shake it off, but that image of him in the mirror haunted her. Later that evening, sitting beside him on the couch as a TV flickered in the background, she sent him a casual message, pretending to scroll. "You seem happier lately," she said, keeping her tone light. Nash didn't turn. His eyes stayed on the screen, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Do I?" She shifted, crossing her legs, watching him closely. "Yeah, like you've been busy." This time, he looked at her directly. His gaze was measured, calm. "I guess I've just been using my time more wisely." A chill crawled down her spine. Over the next several days, she began noticing more signs. His phone buzzed with notifications more frequently. His early morning jogs began earlier. One evening, he returned home, humming a tune she didn't recognize, and went straight to the shower without a word. Then came Friday. They sat across from each other at breakfast, the clink of cutlery and ceramic the only sounds. "I've got plans tonight," Nash said suddenly, as he sipped his coffee. Juniper froze mid-sip, her hand still clutching the cup mid-D. "Oh," she asked, trying to mask the tension in her voice. "With who?" "The woman from the gym," he answered easily. It hit her like a wave. She had no words, only a rising panic twisting in her chest. She wanted to say something, anything, to shift the balance, but the words wouldn't come. Nash was simply following the path she had laid out. And now, she was the one scrambling. That night, he dressed with quiet purpose. The shirt he chose was one she barely recognized. A new scent of cologne hung in the air as he moved through the house. He didn't ask where she was going. He didn't mention her co-worker. That's when the truth hit her. She had never intended this to become real. It was meant to provoke, to stir his emotions, to make him feel unsure. But now, she was the one reeling. She didn't leave the house. Her co-worker's text went unanswered. Instead, she paced the living room, phone in hand, waiting for a message that never came, hoping he'd come home early, hoping this had all been some kind of bluff. But Nash didn't message. And he didn't come home early. When the front door finally opened at 3 a.m., he entered calmly, as if nothing had changed. Juniper remained frozen on the couch, her gaze fixed on him as he stepped through the door. "How was your night?" she asked, her voice more fragile than she meant it to be. Nash slipped off his jacket, casually draping it over the back of a chair. "It was fine," he said simply, no warmth, no guilt, just indifference. The chill that swept over her wasn't from the air, but from the way his words offered no explanation, no reassurance. She waited for him to take it back, to downplay it, to offer some sign that this still meant something. But Nash wasn't making excuses. He wasn't even trying. Without sparing her another glance, he walked toward the bedroom, leaving Juniper surrounded by silence that suddenly felt unbearable. The next morning, when she woke, the world felt wrong. Heavy, as if something vital had slipped out from under her. A quiet dread settled in her chest, the fear that Nash was slipping further away, and that she had no idea how to stop it. When she stepped into the kitchen, she found him sitting at the table, calmly sipping his coffee and scrolling through his phone. There was no tension in his body, no visible trace of the night before, as if nothing had changed. "You got in late," she said, trying to sound casual. "I did," he replied, not even glancing up. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him, studying his face for any trace of conflict, any sign that this was still a game with rules she could follow. But it wasn't a game anymore. Nash was done pretending. "Nash," her voice wavered, "what's happening to us?" Finally, he looked at her. His eyes were steady, unreadable. "I don't know," he said. "You tell me. This was your idea, wasn't it?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to explain, to take it all back. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," she said, barely above a whisper. He gave a small, bitter laugh. "What did you think would happen? That I'd chase you down and beg you not to go through with it?" He set his cup down and leaned back slightly. His voice stayed calm, but the words cut clean. "I've had time to think, Juniper, about what it meant when you suggested we see other people. About what that said, about how you really saw us." Her heart pounded, each word landing like a stone in her chest. "I made a mistake," she said quickly, trying to close the distance between them. But Nash didn't move. A long silence stretched out, the kind that can't be filled with apologies. He stood slowly, rinsed his mug at the sink, then turned back to face her. "Thank you," he said, "for finally showing me who you are." And then he walked away. Juniper sat still, stunned, while panic began to build like a rising tide. Minutes passed before she forced herself to stand. When she stepped into their bedroom, her breath caught. The divorce papers were already signed, laid neatly on the bed. Days blurred together after that. But one morning, she found herself at the doorway, watching in disbelief as Nash packed his suitcase. The hiss of the zipper sliced through the silence like a warning bell. "Nash, wait," she said, stepping into the room. Her voice cracked, and she tried to mask it with a forced smile. "This has gone too far. I forgive you for everything. Let's just put this behind us, okay? I'll forget what happened if you do. We can start fresh." He paused, hands resting on the suitcase. When he turned to look at her, his expression held no anger, only certainty. That's when it hit her. He wasn't scared of losing her. He was ready to leave, and she was the one grasping at control she no longer had. "I don't need your forgiveness," he said flatly. "These past few days have shown me a lot, and now I know I deserve better." He picked up his keys, lifted his suitcase, and walked out the door. The soft click of the lock sliding into place was the last sound she heard before the silence swallowed her whole.